Hello, David. Welcome to Talks with David on God.
Thank you.
It's good to have you on the show because it's really hard to talk to David without you.
That's true.
I'd like to talk about effortless effort. Uh, the the idea of doing what we need to do or doing whatever's before us that has on one level of reality that does require some effort. Like you gotta to drink this cup of tea, I need to use my muscles and put it up to my mouth. I mean, technically that's effort, but yet there's an effort in life. They don't have to have the burden of life, the burden of enlightenment. I need to get somewhere, or the burden of forgiveness. Like, I wish I could forgive them, but it's so hard, or that kind of different effort. Uh, what does it mean to you to have effortless effort?
So I was talking to Robert the other day when we were practicing, and so I asked him. He's teaching yoga now, right? And
Yeah.
asked him how it was going, and he said when he's in class, when he's teaching, it's great. It's when he gets home that he starts to have doubts.
Mm.
So um, then I realized really the difference, I think, between what my teacher taught and what I had been practicing up until that point was these glasses is I realized that the real core of what my teacher was teaching was shifting your level of attention. And I realized, well, that's actually the effortless effort. So I think that one phrase, and I don't quite remember it, but it said something like, "You can go to a healer and get healed, uh, but you got to keep going back. You can go to a teacher that can teach you how to heal yourself, but it's like a never-ending job. Or you can go to a mystic and learn that you've never needed healing to begin with." Right. So basically what that's talking about is different levels of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me reflect on the fact that my teacher, the only mantra he ever gave is, I am God, I am God, I am God, I'm no different from God. And it goes to David Icke talking about, he said, just say, I'm infinite consciousness having a human experience. He goes, do that for 2 weeks. He goes, you'll never be the same. So I realized what it is you're just shifting your level of consciousness. At your lowest level of consciousness, or normal level of consciousness, your all your subconscious patterns are all being activated, and you're constantly dealing with those. So in that phase of my life, then it's the spiritual path, and you take 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, or 5 steps forward and 10 steps back, or some version of that, where I didn't really wasn't making much progress because I was at a level of consciousness that I was activating all my patterns, and it's kind of almost like a losing battle. It's like bailing trying to bail the water out of the ocean, and you
Mm.
just keep bailing and bailing and bailing, and you're not really making a dent, right? So then I think then a higher level of consciousness is when you start operating from a loving heart, and I think that's better. Um, but I think even then you're still working at a level where you're kind of slipping in and out of a higher level of consciousness. And then I think that the final effective level is that you don't approach things as how do I solve this, or you work on it, you first raise your consciousness to higher levels. So when you say I'm God, or David Icke's I'm infinite consciousness having a human experience, if you practice that, you'll find it shifts your consciousness. And it's once again, it's like that library. So let's just say it's library with 5 different floors, and whatever floor you're on, all the books are at that level of complexity. So let's just say first level is for toddlers, right? And then, so no matter where you go, you get a book on science or a book on trees, it's toddler level, right? And if you don't know that, you just maybe walk around and go, boy, there's really not much information on trees or whatever, because it's just all really low level information. And let's just say up at the next level, it's maybe high school level. So it's a little more complex, but you go up to the highest level, maybe it's quantum physics level of understanding everything. So they say, okay, well, a tree is just energy, right? Energy at this particular vibration. So that's just everywhere, every book you pick up, it's going to have a perspective that's dramatically different than you've ever heard before. So I think that's really the trick. The trick is, rather than struggling with your problems directly, go to raising your frequency of consciousness and then come back to it. It may not even be a problem. I remember, over and over, when I would take whole groups of people in a room that I was teaching a spiritual class in, when I would take them up to high levels of consciousness, who are you? That's love everywhere, that type of thing. When I got them all up to that level, and then I would bring them back out of it again, and when they're still at a pretty high frequency, I'd ask, were there any questions? And normally I got tons of questions, but when they would open their eyes, nobody had any questions, because I think at that level of consciousness, it completely shifted their perspective on life while they were at that level of consciousness. So there was no questions. And really, to a great extent, there were no problems either. Because from that level of consciousness, you just felt the innate perfection of everything that you're going through.
You talk about raising your frequency, and there's a couple ways I think generally I've gone about it, and I think people have gone about it. The first way doesn't work very well, which is I'm going to raise my frequency by trying to be better. I'm trying to be more positive. I'm trying to be this thing that's in my mind. I'm trying to make the world different. I'm gonna go out and do some good. And that inevitably has failed for me. It maybe some short-term success.
And me.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're doing is you're still operating on a level of mind. So once again, you're trying to
well, I'm trying to bring truth into the image. I'm trying to like bring darkness and assimilate it into the light. Right. And the light, there is no little bit of light. It's either light.
Plus, I think that thought has polarity. The harder you try to be better, the more at some level you're affirming that you're not there.
Absolutely. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So
and the other way, though, that has been at least my experiential benefit right away is removing barriers, looking for my judgments that are covering up what's already there, which is God. All there is God. And so God is here. Why don't I experience it? Well, it seems to be most of the time for me that it's my judgments of it and they and me and all those. And man, I have a packed up high.
Yeah, well, that's part of being human on this particular classroom. That's really, those are the ropes. When we use the analogy of the Goodyear blimp, those are the ropes that are holding the Goodyear blimp down to keep it from floating up into the sky.
Yeah.
So my teacher came at it directly with the affirmation, I'm God, I'm God, I'm no different from God. So I said, I found that David Icke's, I'm an infinite consciousness having a human experience, or you could say I'm infinite love, or I'm infinite peace, or I'm infinite joy having a human experience. To me, those are all functional words that tap me into higher frequencies of divinity rather than just saying I'm God, because I just found that that word wasn't very good for me, just because I think of all the misunderstandings that go along with that word. Whereas if I say I'm infinite consciousness, having a human experience, and then just I am, you really think about it, I am infinite consciousness having a human experience, and you say it not just mindlessly. I'm infinite consciousness having a human experience. I'm infinite consciousness having a human experience. That's the same problem I had with I'm God, I'm God, I'm God. I guess it doesn't work. You got to stop and think, I am infinite consciousness. I am infinite consciousness having a human experience, and say it more from a level of heart, and then you begin to feel that shift of frequency and notice what happens to the problem, quote unquote problem you have. It loses its concreteness. What makes a problem is when we can't really see any or many solutions to it. So you just kind of get stuck. Whereas rather than trying to, how do I do that? How do I do it? How do I do it? Rather than trying to figure it out, if you raise your consciousness through whatever technique works for you, then a lot of times it's not even that the solution will come to you, but maybe all of a sudden it doesn't really feel like a problem anymore. And which then removes that block to higher levels of consciousness, at which maybe there's a million answers for that problem. Yeah. Or it just seeks to be, it's no longer a problem. It's like, it's no big deal.
It's like the mystic analogies you started with. You realized, there was never a problem to begin.
You don't need any healing. You've never been not perfect.
That's right.
So
how do I be special? Oh wait, there is no me.
Right. So to me, that's when I realized, I think that's what the Tao Te Ching talks about, the effortless effort. It's you just shifting your consciousness is not, it's an effort in a sense, but it's not an effort in the classic way we learn to make effort. We learn to make effort usually emotionally or physically or mentally. We push or pull something, right? This is different. It's shifting consciousness. And then when you shift that consciousness, you'll find, just as going to the high level of the library, that everything now takes on a different perspective. And at a high enough perspective, everything's perfect, because you realize a system is in place designed to bring you exactly what you need to help you awaken. So if that's true, then what would you change? You wouldn't change anything. You just pay attention to the catalyst of the lesson being presented to you, and you just go about solving it in as close to a frequency of divine love as you can. But a lot of times then you don't have to think about it. A lot of times from high levels of consciousness, a lot of times you just get the answer. You just get the whole thing. And this is one of the things Nancy Dennison talked about. She goes, when we're on the other side, infinite information is available to you. You just hold attention and intention. She goes, but that's not deprived of you while you're in physical form. And that's, in my opinion, what she's talking about, that you just raise frequency and then you look for the answer. And a lot of times you'll get the whole thing.
Right. We can access it.
Yeah, access it, or maybe realize it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I brought up that topic. I thought, because that's completely different than how we learn to do it as humans. As humans, it's like I said, we grind out an effort either emotionally, mentally, physically, or a combination of all three, and you just grind it through. Whereas I think our natural state, you just hold your attention and intention to whatever you need to know, and you get it. So, like I said, like Nancy Dennison said, she said that's still available to you, but I think you just got to learn to approach it in a different way. And I think the different way is, rather than trying to solve the problem, just start by raising frequency.
Mm.
I guess there's been people who say, yeah, I'm gonna pray on it. I'm gonna pray on that. And what is that? When you do it successfully, you're raising your frequency, and a lot of times then you get a much better answer than you had before.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I mean, the proof is in the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof is in trying that when you're having a difficult time with something,
Yeah.
rather than just racking your brains trying to solve it.
Yeah.
Just take a moment and,
Well,
I
and
mean,
there's a certain aspect that you don't have to figure out. At least that's my experience. I don't have to figure out how it works or why it works. Like I'll say, Jesus, Holy Spirit, I'm willing right now. I know that there's peace in this right now where I'm at, and I don't experience it. Will you help me? I forgive whatever is there to forgive. I forgive my judgments. I get I don't see with Jesus, with Christ's vision. I get that, and yet this is my experience. So help me. Like those little openings for
oh,
me.
so, but I mean, if you think about the energetics of what you just said, the energetics is raising your frequency.
Yeah.
You're reaching the higher levels than you consider yourself at now, with a frequency that has a divinity to it, according to how you feel about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're raising your frequency, you're kind of turning off the conscious patterns and subconscious patterns by reaching for a higher frequency. So
Yeah.
you're reaching for a higher frequency in the way that works for you, and you're turning off your normal mechanisms of solving the problem. So in other words, you're disengaging your mind and your subconscious. So in other words, you're kind of getting out of the way, and then you wait for the response.
Right.
Yeah, so that's basically the methodology. Whatever way works for you, energetically, that's what you're doing. You're reaching for higher levels of consciousness, and you're just kind of setting aside your normal process. And then you kind of just got to wait, right? You just, be still and know I am God, right? Just be
Mm-hmm.
still and wait for that. So that's I think what Nancy Dennison is referring to, that's available to you, whatever technique that works for you. But that, I think, the basic underlying uh, energetics is exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. I always appreciate your time, man. Being on these and exploring these kind of metaphysical and spiritual
Yeah. So you
things.
have found on your own that that's working better for you than almost anything else. But that's exactly what you're doing, is you're raising frequency, raising frequency. So I mean, what's Jesus except an embodiment of high frequency,
Right.
right? And when you
Right.
read his words and you feel him, what are you feeling? You're feeling that high frequency. So you experience that as feeling of love, feeling that peace, of
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness. It's high frequency, right? So you are reaching through high frequency, through the embodiment of high frequency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then get out of the way. Get out of the way. I'm going to quit grinding judgment with my brain. I'm going to quit thinking about this. I'm going to quit trying to just come to figure it out. I'm just going to reach for high frequency, and then be quiet and get the heck out of the way and see what comes through.
Amen.
Yeah,
Let it
and
all
that,
go.
to me, then that's what's actually what you're doing, is you're learning to um, you're learning to be divinity in a physical body, is I think what you're doing. It's a different way of being and thinking and making effort, which I think is more in line with our eternal self,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather than just grinding away in the belief of this physical form and in our limitations. It's raising to a higher level in which case there's knowing, and then rather than thinking and analyzing, at higher levels of consciousness, there's just, you can hit knowing. And
Right.
people experience knowing where they have some bothering, all of a sudden they just get the whole answer, and it's three-dimensional. It's not just,
Yeah.
and when you get it, you know you have it. It's like, what do they say, intuition. You have an intuitional insight, right? And I think that's just some way you access higher levels of consciousness. So imagine if you can learn to do that all the time, right? And that's part of learning to become the superhuman, become the divinity in a human form, is learning now how to approach all this in the highest way, rather than what we normally do.
Right. Let's do that.
Yeah, well, and just give it a try. I mean, that's all. Just give it a try before you start freaking out about something, whatever it is. Just take a moment and just raise frequency, either, through prayer or surrender,
Yeah.
or
And all those freak out moments is the opportunity to surrender and ask for help, or do, whatever, like my practice or whatever it
yeah,
is. It's always the reminder. It's a
right.
wonderful reminder.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of it. I think that's the point of this human life, is to learn to manifest our divinity into these human bodies. And I think that's a big part of it, is learning how to do things in the way of divinity, rather than the way of what we've our habits as humans, how we've been taught how to settle things and deal things and fix things. Just understand that there's a much, and it's the effortless effort, actually. When you get it, it's like, oh, that wasn't hard at all.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So make it look like, I guess the analogy could be just, if you want to fly high up in the air, rather than getting in a plane and gassing it up and fixing the motor and learn how to fly it, you just go untie the ropes off the Goodyear blimp and climb in the blimp and just float off.
Yeah.
Right. So both will get you to the same altitude, but one's a lot of work. The other one's fairly
Yeah.
effortless.
And I completely experience that. It's so interesting to me. Just my simple thing that I'm doing, my practice right now of forgiving whatever it is, even if I don't understand, and any inkling of frustration to anger, and in between, I forgive it. And then Jesus helped me to see with Christ's vision and not what I've made up through my own judgment. This little thing that I'll do over and over and over and over and over again. And it's so simple to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's not even a book. I can't write a book about that. It's like a sentence.
Well, you could.
I could.
Lots of people get one concept, write a book.
But the thing that's really interesting to me is how many times I haven't done that, even though it's so simple, and I kept in my suffering
Yeah. Well,
because of my.
but it's a new thing. It's a new thing, and I think this is what my teacher, he would say. Sometimes he goes, "You guys are making this way too hard." He goes, "This is really easy." And
Right.
Jesus said, my burden is easy and my yoke is light. I think they're both saying the same thing. You guys are just doing this the hard way. So how many, I mean, if you believe in reincarnation, we've probably been doing the hard way for thousands of lifetimes. So, you can't expect overnight to change your approach, but you can expect overnight to start to learn it and start to become a little more familiar with it. And the beauty of it is it's closer to your true nature, so that will draw you towards it. It's not like you have to push really hard. Every time you do it, you go, oh yeah, that was good. I should do that more often, right? So it just takes a little bit of effort at first, but then after a while, it just becomes your nature. And then now life becomes the effortless effort. It just becomes just everything starts becoming a lot easier. And once in a while, you're tempted to go back to the old ways of doing it the hard way, right? But the joy of it is, as you practice that path, I call it the path of joy, you kind of start to like it. It's like, yeah, I don't want to go back to being a miserable SOB again. So
Yeah,
it starts becoming
I
that
concur.
reminder.
I concur. It is much better to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's much
that's
better.
you know, for people, the 3 people listening, give it a try. Just give it a try.
Oh man,
Yeah,
they're
give it a
gonna
try.
love
See how
it.
you like it.
All right, brother. Thanks again. I love it. Let's do this again next week.
God willing.
God
God willing.
willing.